Hello again, I'm Stephen Wells, the host of the Motoring Weekly podcast for the Australian Historic Road and Racing community, and this is episode 120. This week I had the pleasure of interviewing James Nicholls, the founder of the Sydney Harbour Concours and Halcyon Auctions, and I met him at their headquarters in Mascot, close to Sydney Airport. James has had a storied career with historic cars and Concours d'Elegance events around the world, although he is still based in Sydney. So here's my conversation with James. I'm with James Nicholls, who's a very interesting character down here in Australia. He describes himself as a writer, broadcaster, lecturer, and classic car and boat expert. He's also an auctioneer and the founder of a globally recognised Concours d'Elegance. He's had a very interesting career in sports and photo image marketing, based in London and Monte Carlo before heading out to Sydney. James, why did you come to Sydney?
I was working for a company called All Sport, and we'd been bought by a major organisation called Getty Images. And at the time, we were the official photographers for the Olympic Games, and I've worked at 8 Summer and Winter Olympics. And at the time, we had just coming up to the year 2000 and the Sydney Olympics, we had an agency here, and we decided to terminate that agency. Sounds rather nasty, but convert them into a wholly owned office. So I was sent down here with the task of creating Getty Images Australia, and I ran the Asia Pacific region for Getty Images. And eventually they said, "Oh, James, you've got to come home. We're paying you too much money." It was good. It was in the days of $3 to the pound, and it was fantastic. I was living like a king. I think my boss came down and saw my beach pad and my nice car, and thought, "We're paying him too much money, so make him come home." And I was enjoying life here, so I didn't really want to go back to London. I was offered a place in Europe. I decided I'd stay here in Australia, as you know why we're here. You're a New South Welshman in New South Wales. So that's why I was in Australia. But I say, after a few years, they said either come back to London or, we'll make you redundant. The redundancy package was quite good, and I foolishly thought it would be really easy to get another great big job. But that wasn't quite as easy as I thought. I had an interest in classic cars, and one thing led to another, and I started working with classic cars.
Thanks, James. You actually came out 2 years after me, so I came out in the late 90s as well. And funny enough, a similar situation. I didn't particularly want to go back after leaving the London-based company that I was working for, so went off and did something else. But there's something, a connection between us. We both lived in Bristol during the mid-'80s, where the gorgeous Bristol cars were built. So I suspect that we were probably floating around the same bars and places of iniquity at the same time.
It's funny you should mention Bristol and Bristol cars. So, yes, I used to teach just outside Bristol, and my school where I taught, very kindly, because they thought highly of me, I started my career as a school teacher, said I could do a master's degree, and they gave me time off to do my master's degree, which was in literature, arts, and mass media. Now it would be online something, but back in the 80s. But yes, I love Bristol. It's a beautiful city. I went to Bristol University to do my master's degree.
Talking about Bristols, you own a Bristol. Tell me about that, James.
Well, the Bristol 408, which I own, is chassis number 1, which I'm inordinately proud of, in that it's a beautiful motor car. It had been a bit used and abused. A chap had bought it in the UK. It was quite an interesting history in the UK. But the chap had bought it who moved to Perth in Western Australia, and he brought the car with him. Little did he realise, I don't think he knew the importance of it. It's a really important car. It was owned by the boss of Bristol, Anthony Crook, and who raced at the Monaco Grand Prix in the 50s. Very well-known character. Bristol built one car a week, and when this car was made, it was more expensive than an Aston Martin DB5. In fact, more expensive than nearly everything. I mean, and it was also faster than a Ferrari 250 GTE. But unfortunately, Bristol lurched from one disaster to another, bankruptcy, blah-de-blah. They only built one car a week. They're all handmade in the Bristol Aeroplane Factory. It was part of the Bristol Aeroplane Company who did the bombers during the Second World War. It's a really famous company. And this car, chassis number 1, was used as the press car. It was the brochure car, blah-de-blah-de-blah. It's got some historical documents from the factory where they were using it, as Crook owned it, as the boss. They were using it to try things, different tyres. It's really good. And I enjoy the paperwork which I managed to collect around it. 1963 Motor Magazine, 1964 Car Book of the Year, and it's the picture of my car. I was at Goodwood Revival a couple of months ago, I suppose now, and there's in amongst the rain, you go wandering and the racing, you go wandering around to have a look. And there's a big stand there selling brochures and books and this sort of thing. And I said, all catalogue. I said, have you got anything on Bristol? And he pulled a couple out. My car, to see it there, it's just really, really, that's my car, So it's really nice, and it's beautiful to drive. It's got a Chrysler V8 engine in it, which a lot of those cars in the 60s and 70s had American engines because the American engines were so good, and styled by a Brit or by an Italian with some American muscle in it. It's really good that, it had come to this country, had been a bit used and abused, been brought to this country by somebody who moved from England, where it had quite a good history, to Perth in Western Australia. And a few years ago, I went over to see a client of mine, the great late Peter Briggs. What a wonderful man, what a wonderful car collector he was. I also saw this car while I was there in the car park of the pub right on the beach where I used to have an apartment when I was a cricket coach in Australia the first time I lived here. You didn't know I was a professional cricketer, did you? I saw the car, and I knew it was chassis number 1, but I couldn't find the engine number. And so I decided not to buy the car because I wanted to verify it was the real deal. Anyway, a few years later, I got the Bristol itch again, and I found one in the UK that I was going to buy and bring over. It was a 408. Before I did that, I just thought, I'll just send an email to the Bristol Owners Club asking if anybody's got a 408, 9 or 10 for sale. Anyway, I get contacted by a commander, an Englishman who was in the Australian Navy on submarines, who was an engineer on submarines. So he's used to dealing with big engines, and he was a lieutenant commander or commander, I can't remember which. Lovely chap. And he said, well, I've got one. He sent me an email and the picture of it, and I thought, that's the same car. Anyway, he'd purchased it, tried to drive it from Perth back to Canberra, broke down on the first day, but fixed it, and then took the car, and he'd had it for 4 or 5 years, and he'd really sorted it out, and everything was... So I went and saw him. It was during COVID. I managed to get down to... I didn't break any rules, but, in and out when we were allowed to travel. So I went down to Canberra, flew to see him. He showed me the car. And he's a true gentleman, commander in the Royal Navy and in the Royal Australian Navy as well. His wife was beautiful. Unfortunately, she's passed away subsequently, but she gave me a beautiful bowl of soup, and we talked about the car and all the cars. He was about 80, all the cars he'd had over his life. Anyway, I made him an offer, and he said, I'm not taking an offer. This is the price. And I thought, well, that's pretty gentlemanly of him. I went home. I thought about it for a couple of days, and I called him back. So I purchased the car, I flew down to see it or to pick it up, and I drove back from Canberra, and it was just a blast. So I got to the first corner, and there's a bloke in a tradie in a ute. Wow, I like your car, mate. That's like even before I've left where these people live. And I got on the motorway to come back, and it was just, when you've got a new car and an old new car and you haven't driven it, you're continually watching the dials and the needles. And I was just on the motorway, just hammering it. Doing my 110, and of course it was quite busy, and as you get to the hills, everybody's doing 110. They tend to slow down to 190. This thing just kept powering through, and everybody's looking at me, this old banger, and it just hammered through at 180 uphill, 110 uphill, and it's just magnificent. So great thing to drive, but it had been painted blue. It was quite a nice blue, and it looked good. but having realised it and seen all the pictures of it in the books and in the magazines, I took the decision. Well, first off, I wrapped it, and because I thought I can't afford to have it repainted, I've just bought it. But I wanted it to be the original colour, so I wrapped it in the gunmetal grey and silver roof two-tone. And I said to them when I wrapped it, it'll be all right. Oh yeah, no, it won't. Anyway, it didn't look great when wrapped, and I then decided I was going to paint it. When we tore the wrapping off, it just anyway. So there was no going back. Then we had to do it. So it's now been restored by Justin Hills in Taree, and you should do a podcast with Justin. He is unbelievable. Has done he's won the world's best custom. Which, for a small English guy in country New South Wales to go to the States and win that prize is pretty amazing. He's won with his special Jaguar, which Ian Callum, when he was head of Jaguar, design said this is Sir William Lyons would have approved. He's done some great things. So he's won at the Quail. He's won at Salon Privé. He's won at Zoute Grand Prix in Belgium. Wherever they've showed the car, it's won. Anyway, he did the restoration work on my car, and he personally did it, and it's looking absolutely fantastic. I'm in love with it, and it's for sale because now it hasn't got a scratch on it. I'm just looking at it and going, I'm going to sell this because I need the money, but now's the time to sell it rather than ruin it again and go through the whole process. I love it, but it's too good for me.
So thanks, James. I want to talk about two topics with you today. The first one, because we're here at the offices of Halcyon Auctions, and you've got some auctions happening very, very soon. And then also we want to finish off with the Sydney Harbour Concours d'Elegance that you founded about 5 years ago now or so?
I started the Sydney Harbour Concours. This year was our 6th edition. Next March is going to be our magnificent 7th. But the two companies, Halcyon Auctions and Sydney Harbour Concours d'Elegance, are sort of interlinked in that I've had Halcyon Auctions for a couple of years, but haven't really been able to give it the attention. We've had some really successful sales. Sold the Peter Briggs Maserati 3500 GT for Spider for $750,000, which the year that was 3 or 4 years ago. The year it sold was right in the bang in the middle of the pricing worldwide. So I was quite pleased with that. And Adolfo Orsi, the great Maserati man, who I know quite well, obviously his family owned Maserati at one stage, but he is the authority on Maserati, and not because of his name, but because he knows so much. He said that he thought that was a really good price for the car, and right on the money. That buyer and seller should be really happy. So that was a good sale, and that was quite an interesting auction. I did it at the Sydney Harbour Concours d'Elegance under the auspices of Halcyon Auctions. So a bit of, I don't know, is that insider dealing? I don't know, bit of simony. And it was really good because it was a one-car auction, which means you've got to have big whatsits, because if it doesn't sell, it's an absolute disaster. But if it does sell, you're a hero. It was hard work, but we sold the car, say it's 733,000 something. So that was a really good achievement. So we've done a few sales with cars, and we've done a few sales around other luxury items. I think we're going to concentrate, So Sydney Harbour Concours, has taken up a lot of my time and effort. I've now taken on a business partner who's really, really good at organisation, at partnerships, all the stuff I don't like doing. I like doing the curating the cars and organising the jury, all the nice car bits I like doing. I'm not really interested in bills and invoicing and paperwork and back office stuff, except when it comes to Halcyon Auctions. With Mark joining me on Sydney Harbour Concours and bringing a professional team in to work on that event, which has grown considerably over the years, that's freed up some of my time to look at Halcyon Auctions. And obviously there's a bit of a gap in the marketplace here. There are a couple of dodgy companies, we won't mention their names. Shannon's have stopped doing auctions. So I think there's the opportunity. Everything's going to online as well. And obviously online plays a big part of any auction company these days. But I think we want to try and bring back a bit of the old world glamour and stand up there. And so we've got 2 auctions running concurrently. One is of automobilia. That's completely online, 150 lots of nice, interesting pieces, model cars, brochures, books, all sorts of interesting odds and ends related to motoring. And at the same time, we've got an auction of motor cars of 24 lots, 26 lots, 24 motor cars, and 2 number plates. And actually, of the 24 cars, 23 of them are absolutely fantastic. There's one that's not quite as good, but it's still an interesting car. Condition's not great, but we've got some beautiful cars down there. We've got 3 Porsches, which are all immaculate and really, really nice. We've got some oddities from France, Citroën Mahari, Citroën DS23 Safari, DS Sedan. We've got some excellent Mercedes-Benz, 2 SL320. So if you don't like the silver one, you can have the emerald green one, or vice versa. We've got a VW. We've got a really, really nice range. It's quite difficult because, as I say, we've only been doing a few auctions, 1 a year or whatever, of various bits and bobs. So we're working on our database and building up. And of course, the marketplace at the moment isn't particularly strong. I think at the top end internationally, the really, really good cars still continue to demand, eye-watering prices. But cars that, a person might want for a weekend car, 1 car or 2 cars, I think collectors are still buying, but the person who, had that, I've always wanted a X, Y, or Z, perhaps isn't buying because, the world's a difficult place for everybody at the moment, money-wise, and, think people being a bit more conservative with there's so much going on in the world. Maybe I won't go and spend that money on a car. Maybe I'll just keep it safe just in case who knows what's going to happen. House prices in this country are crazy. Everybody's struggling to pay their mortgage, blah, 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 blah. So it's a difficult marketplace, but, we'll do okay, I think. We'll watch this space. We'll be recorded in Adolfo Orsi's collector car book, the Bible, which I'm also the Australian distributor for. So if you want to buy a copy of that, please let me know. So I do lots of different things, which is quite good. And it makes it very interesting for me. Am I wearing my Sydney Concours hat or am I wearing my Halcyon Auctions hat? And as I mentioned earlier, I play cricket professionally, so I still go out 1 day a week and do some cricket coaching, which is great fun. Because I work from home, as many people do nowadays, you're sat at home with a dog at your feet, but it's quite nice to have that half-day coaching, to be with the kids, to be with younger people who are also coaching, and to get you away from just looking at your computer and stuff.
So you've got these 2 auctions that they're on coming up to the ends in the next few days. I've actually got a couple of bids on items in the memorabilia because they fit my desires for the mark that I'm heavily involved in. You've also got an app because, as you said, everybody is now online. How long has that been going? Are you finding that's working for you?
With the app, I really don't know. I'm not particularly tech savvy, but I was told I had to have an app, and I've got an app. Whether there's 1 million people on that app or just you, Stephen, I don't know. Just before you arrived, I'm trying to place an ad on Facebook just to drum up a little bit of more extra, interest around the sale at the moment. I'm just, I don't know what I'm doing there. So I'm not really particularly good at that. And one of the reasons for doing these things, I've got a 15-year-old son who I love dearly. Everybody thinks I'm his granddad. And we've had some laughs about that when going to the doctor or at school and things, people who don't know. Anyway, he's just a great kid. And you're just, talking about the world today. Who knows in a few years' time, if I can build Halcyon Auctions into something, it might be something that he might be interested in coming into, or the Concours or whatever, or he'll probably just go off and do his own thing. But You never know, he might be able to help me with the apps.
Well, I hope he does follow his father because, when you do follow in the family footsteps, you take a lot of knowledge and enthusiasm between the generations. So we'll be rooting for him if he does actually get to that point. So what's next for Halcyon? You've got the concours coming up in February. Are you going to do more auctions between now and then, or are you going to slow it down to get ready for the concours?
I think we're going to try and do one more auction between now and the concours. So we've got the two happening at the moment: Collection of a Motorist, which is 151 lots of automobilia, and then Motors and Motorities, which is the 26 cars, which is an online auction and then goes live at 2:00 on Sunday. And so whatever bids have been put in online, then I take over as the auctioneer. But we want to do another auction before then. Exactly what that'll be, I don't know. But we've certainly got plans to spread our wings a little bit. I'm moving house at the moment, I think, and so it's all a bit topsy-turvy. But what I've realised, I've got an awful lot of lovely artwork that lays under the bed, which is probably not the best place for it. So, I've got somebody who's very knowledgeable of art and, again, has a lot of artwork. So I think we're going to do some artwork sales. We're certainly going to do some more automobilia sales. And we certainly see ourselves doing hopefully 2 or 3 car auctions a year moving forwards. Obviously, Australia's a really interesting country in that, everything shuts down at Christmas time, which makes things difficult. Everybody goes away for summer. So I'd like to do an auction in February, but then is that too close to the concours, which starts on February the 28th? And in fact, the weekend before runs from February 28th to the 2nd of March. The weekend before, I'll be judging in India, which is the 21-gun salute, which is a great event I've done several times and I'm the MC at. I'll be judging there, so I've got to go to India, get back on like Tuesday and start moving cars across the Cockatoo Island, which is a bit of a logistical challenge. So it's there's a lot happening, and with that summer hiatus, we won't be able to get enough. We might try and get a small auction in before Christmas, with a bit of luck, but I think then, January is not a good time. February we're going to be really busy. March is going to be the concours, and then we'll be looking to do a couple of auctions after that.
And I'll put the links up into the description of the podcast for the auctions so that people can go and register as a bidder for current and future auctions.
Thank you.
But I do want to turn the attention to your other creation, being that concours event on Cockatoo Island. How long did it take you to think about creating it and then getting it created? What went into the actual creation of such a major event for Sydney?
Well, it has become quite an important event, he says, blowing his own trumpet. We've been recognised, shortlisted 3 times at the International Historic Monitoring Awards, which is pretty amazing. And the event has grown from strength to strength. It also, there have been people trying to do concours events in this country, but haven't been doing them particularly well. And I was asked by somebody to help them, and because I know a bit about it, and I judge at various events around the world. I mean, I was a judge at the Ferrari official 70th anniversary concorso at Maranello. I've judged at Zouk Grand Prix, 21-gun salute, Chantilly Arts and Elegance, which is great. Just got back from that earlier in the year, and a few others. So I was asked, and I just thought, I can do this better myself. And I went to see a client one day, and he lives down this little narrow lane. And as I was driving down there, I saw this blue plaque on the wall. I thought, well, that's, like you get in London. I thought, well, that's interesting. Anyway, I went and saw the client, and did an evaluation on his Ferrari or something like that. And then as I was driving out, I was a bit early for my next meeting. I popped my head in here. And it was at a place called Lindsay House, which is a National Trust property in Darling Point. And it was just beautiful. If you haven't been, as on their open days, you must go. It's absolutely gorgeous. It's tucked away. It's got views onto the harbour. It's pretty but very small. Anyway, I thought, this is perfect. I've been to Concorso d'Eleganza, Villa d'Este, and I thought, this is like, but smaller. So we had the first one in 2019, and it was a pretty good success. and we immediately outgrew it. And so somebody then said, well, but we did that, and I thought it was going to be really easy. We just park a few cars on the lawn and blah, blah, blah. This would be you cannot believe the amount of organisation. So there are people who, there was one in what is it called, the Yarra Valley, a couple of years ago. Oh, we're going to do this, we're going to do that. They did it once, and it was a great show that they did, but people realise how difficult it is. But I'm fortunate. I've got some really good friends, Andrew and David Bagley, who run Salon Privé. They gave me a lot of advice. Pick their brains. They also helped me with some. They introduced me to their major sponsors, which was great and really helpful. So we quickly outgrew Lindsay and wanted to do something. And then a friend who brings a car every year, said, "Oh, you should look at Swifts." And Swifts, again, just over the road in Darling Point, is an absolutely magnificent homestead in the Victorian Gothic style. Inside, the furniture all matches the Victorian period. I couldn't live like that, but it's fantastic. Outside, the gardens are just gorgeous with trees that are, 150 years old. And so we went there. And did 2 events there, both of which worked really well. I remember whatever the year the E-Type 60th anniversary was, we were able to drive around, in one gate and round the drive and out the other gate and all of that sort of stuff. And that was really good. And we learned then that people want to see the cars moving. That's really important. So we did 2 years there. We would have gone back for a 3rd year, except that the local council, nothing to do with us, but with other, said that these people who own Swifts couldn't have events there, and so, but nothing, it wasn't our event anyway. So we very quickly had to find somewhere else in year 4, and we went to Hyde Park Barracks, UNESCO World Heritage Site, and that was really good. We did 2 years there, and but even if we wanted to go back, which we didn't, because we couldn't move the cars there, everything was stationary. They were doing some building work, so we had to find somewhere else. A friend of mine said, "Oh, you should do an event on Cockatoo Island." I said, "You must be daft." Cockatoo Island, for those people who don't know it, is amazing, but it is an island with no roads or real infrastructure. It used to be a naval base, convict site, reform school, but there are no roads or anything. It's not like going to the Isle of Wight. It's not like going to Phillip Island, where you drive over on a big bridge. It's the only way on and off is by boat, and when you get there are no roads. But it's a fantastic venue. Anyway, I said, "You must be mad." On a beautiful, sunny harbour day, he took me in his Quiet Flash boat from the eastern suburbs over to Cockatoo Island. It was just gorgeous weather, and this great building, the turbine hall, which was used to make the engines and the propellers this was the hospital of the region for all of the battleships during the Second World War. And the turbine hall, so it's an integral part of Australian maritime history. And the turbine hall, which when it was built in 1946, was purported to be the largest building in the Southern Hemisphere. It's amazing. Vaulting, cathedral-like ceilings, very industrial. Anyway, foolishly, I said we'd do it on Cockatoo Island, then learn how difficult it was going to be. But it was worth the effort. The beautiful luxury motor cars and wonderful classic cars that we have at the event contrast and complement the industrial nature of the building, and we think it fits in very nicely. So, for instance, we had this year we had the Rolls-Royce Phantom that was originally owned by, I've forgotten his name, the chap who used to own the White Star Line, which of course was the boat Titanic, which sunk. So we had that at the event. So we thought, there's a nice naval, boaty connection there. And it is great because the title of our event is the Sydney Harbour Concours d'Elegance, and we are smack bang in the middle of Sydney Harbour on a little titchy island. And it's a great event. It was very well received this year. And we're going to go back again on the 28th of February.
So that's not far away. It's only a few months away. Are there any sneak peeks of what's coming this year in the way of vehicles?
There are. I can tell you, and it's good that it's a podcast because I can tell you to whet your appetite, and it's not a vlog rather than a blog, so you can't actually see them. But just bear with me, and I'll pull up the list. But we've got some great things. Let me start off with, how about a Porsche 91730? You don't see many of those, and if you've ever seen one, if you've never seen one, here's your chance to see it. We've got a 19, hopefully, if we can get it into the country in time, 1933 Alfa Romeo 6C by Figoni, which won at Villa d'Este in 2012, won outright. We've got Lamborghini Miura P400, which was shown at Villa d'Este earlier this year. We've got a Facel Vega Facel 2. I think it's the only one in the country. It's absolutely brilliant. Coming down from Queensland, we've got two. Well, one's on a boat from England. It's only just been purchased. Early Bugatti. We've got another early Bugatti. We've got a 1905 automobile. I can't remember. You'll have to remember, but it's brilliant. It's the only one left in the world. We've got a Porsche Speedster class with a Porsche Speedster Carrera GT. I think they only made 12 of those or something. We've got a Porsche Speedster class with a 964 Speedster, two from 1989, one wide-bodied, one narrow-bodied. You don't see many of those either, as well as the iconic 50s ones, which we've got 3 or 4 coming. Of various iterations. So that's really exciting. I'm hoping to have a Toyota 2000 GT. If that's not finished in time, the owner said he'd bring his Maserati Mistral Spider. Lots and lots of exciting things. You hold the microphone and I'll find the list.
All right, so while James is finding the list, I have actually seen a 917 in the flesh up in Northern California. With one of the big Porsche specialists up there. And in fact, my last podcast was with McCall's Classic, who are actually doing some work on that GT, and they'd brought the Mistral Spider to the Club Maserati Concours a couple of weeks earlier, and the list is now here.
The list. So I'll start at the top in chronological order. An 1905 automobile Eugene Brillet, 24 horsepower. 1924. Oh, this one's in the Australian pre-war coach-built class, Vauxhall 3098. 1926 Rolls-Royce Phantom, again the Australian pre-war class. 1929 Bentley 4.5 litre, really nice one. Rolls-Royce Phantom 2, again in the Australian pre-war coach-built class. The first Bugatti, 1930 Bugatti Type 46 Semi-Profilé Coupe, an amazing 1932 Hot Rod, which is a really exciting car in immaculate condition and a really important hot rod from the 50s. Fabulous. Alvis Speed 20 SC, again the Australian coachbuilt cars. 1935 Bugatti Type 57 Atalante, beautiful. 1935 Lagonda. 1938 De La Haye, 1948 Alfa Romeo 6C Frecciadoro, which is coming all the way from San Marino. Dr. Umberto Galloni came last year with his Alfa, pre-war Alfa. Enjoyed it so much. He's coming back again with 48 Frecciadoro, which is iconic motor car. Very excited about that. Lovely Bentley Mark 6 Park Ward drop head coupe. Austin Healey one. Oh, I'm not sure about that. Hopefully that's going to come, but I won't mention that. Aston Martin 1953 Aston Martin DB24 Mark 1, very nice. That's being brought by last year's gentleman who won the Best in Show pre-war with his Rolls Royce. I've told him, and he's won Best in Show pre-war twice, so I've told him he's got to bring a post-war car this year. Mercedes-Benz 300 SL, Gullwing, iconic. Porsche Speedster Carrera GT, amazing. Lovely Ford Thunderbird. Fiat Abarth 750 GT Speedster, beautiful little car. Not speed, so when I say I'm reading across the list, GT Zagato, double bubble, beautiful. Fantastic XK150S Jaguar drophead coupe. Lightweight E-Type, come and have a look at that. Austin Healey BJ8, fantastic 1953 Lancia Flaminia convertible. Maserati Bora, Porsche 3-litre turbo, Lancia 037 Stradale, that's pretty special. The two newest cars are the last Bugatti Veyron ever built, so that's rather remarkable, and lovely Audi R8 Spider.
That's a hell of a list of cars you've got coming in onto the island. So this is 28th of February to 2nd of March.
Great.
I'll put the link up in the detail of the podcast. So go to the link, buy your tickets, and get over to see some of the most iconic cars you'll ever see in Sydney, February 28th to March the 2nd next year. Thank you, James. One last word?
Yeah, sorry, I know I talked too much, but as well as those 40-odd cars that we'll have in the concours, there'll be about another 25 or 30 cars, if not more, from manufacturers such as Bentley, Rolls-Royce, Lamborghini, McLaren, Porsche, etc., etc.
So a massive event. You're going to be busy all the way through January and February, especially if you're traveling as well. I'll catch up with you probably in between one of your trips just to get an update on the progress and see if anything new is popping up on the list. But thank you for your time, James. We will have a chat soon.
Thank you very much. Edit as you wish.
That's all for this week. It's always great to chat with James. He's an entertaining identity in the local classic car community, and the links to the Sydney Harbour Concours and Halcyon Auctions are in the podcast detail. If you have a club or event that you would like highlighted, send an email to me, stephen@motoringweekly.com.au, and I'll get in touch. And certainly don't forget to subscribe through your favourite podcast player and get the episodes delivered as they're published. I'm Stephen Wells, and you've listened to Motoring Weekly, the podcast for the Australian historic road and racing community.